Welcome to the Growth Boss podcast, where we seek out the secrets to high-performing campaigns from some of the smartest marketers in the world. I'm your host, Jared Smith. Today, I have Alex Galinos with us, and he's going to teach us how to dominate international SEO in the search results. Alex, thanks so much for being here today.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So Alex, for people who aren't familiar with you, can you share maybe a little background on your history as an SEO and handling some different SEO campaigns?
Yeah, sure. So I've been in SEO more or less ever since 2017. I've transitioned through different companies and different industries. I got in SEO from the content side of things as an SEO copywriter. I stayed in the content side for about a year, and then across, many different companies, I got exposed to pretty much all pillars of SEO. I've also gone through very competitive industries as well. So industries like gambling, like online jewelry, e-commerce in general, parenting, HR, e-learning, many different industries and quite a few markets. I've done 19 markets all over the world. Of course, I haven't physically lived in those markets, but worked on, websites that were offered in a specific language.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the short story.
I love it. I love it. And as I understand it, you work full time for is it a ground transportation company called Hoppa in the UK, but they, cover a number of international markets?
Yeah, correct. Hoppa is a ground transportation aggregator. We offer both travel transportation. So the main product up until a year ago was essentially that people could pre-book their transfer for, let's say, a trip that would take place 1 month from now, and they would pre-book the ride from the airport to their hotel and back. And for the past year, we've introduced another product, which is the fact that people can book a taxi right now wherever they are in the world. And we're essentially both on the pre-book product as well as the taxi product, the on-demand product, as we call it. We aggregate other providers, so providers like Uber, Bolt, Get, Addison Lee, under this one roof. So, customers can compare prices, can find the cheapest ride or the ride that's going to get to their place faster, and, eliminating essentially the need to, have different apps, and just having one app to compare them all.
Okay. And how many different countries is this company operating in?
We obviously, like a traffic that's a multilingual website, we get traffic from many different countries. Essentially, in the product side of things, we service the whole world.
Okay.
So we service every airport in the world, or pretty much every airport in the world. Yep. The website is offered in 9 languages. So English, and then, non-yen languages like German, like Dutch, Norwegian, Italian, French, and so on. So you could say that wherever those languages are spoken, we get traffic from.
Okay.
Obviously, we have our primary market, which is the UK, and then secondary markets that, we pay less attention to.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So one of the biggest questions that I've had, and I'm sure a lot of other SEOs have had this, if they haven't worked on international campaigns, which I haven't. So that's why part of the reason I was very excited for this is, how do you structure your website from either a language standpoint or a country targeting standpoint? I've seen, people put kind of all of their content for a certain language or a certain country in a subdomain, in a subdirectory. Kind of walk me through what you guys chose for your site and why.
Yes, that's a very nice question. So from a language setup point of view, we have the languages in subfolders. So, hoppa.com/en/it/fr. So we target languages. Yeah, we have language subfolders. We target, so /en, we target all English speaking countries. So we target languages. Yeah, correct. We target languages, not countries. So, for example, a /en subfolder gets traffic from both the UK primarily, as well as the US and then some other English speaking countries. This was the setup when I got here, and based on my experience, I mean, before I joined Hoppa, this was the setup. This is the setup that I found. And based on my experience, this is the best setup because, languages on a subdomain, at least up until the latest, discussions around this subject, subdomains are considered separate entities. So you kind of have to build them up from scratch.
Right.
So, this setup, I mean, has some pros for the most part, but it does have some cons in the sense that if you want to improve, let's say your rankings in a specific English speaking country, then the way that you can increase the relevance to that specific country is mostly by getting links from that country.
Okay.
So for example, our /en subfolder mostly gets traffic from the UK because this is our primary audience.
Right.
But just because we don't have, let's say, separate language subfolders, so a /US, but our /en subfolder does get traffic from the US, the only way in that specific setup to increase rankings and relevance to the US is mostly through links to US focused destinations. So, New York or, Florida airport or whatever other airport we have on the US.
Yeah.
But yeah, just to get back to the question, the language subfolder is the best one based on my experience.
Okay. And obviously running a website of that size and magnitude, I'm sure comes with it a number of challenges. What were maybe one or two of the biggest challenges that you guys faced, and how did you overcome those?
The main challenge is the fact that this website is vast. I mean, if you service all airports in the world and in 9 languages, you can understand that, there are certain things that you have to work on in more of a bulk mode. So the number one thing that I guess kind of, was a major relief because when I joined, I was kind of tasked with 2 major migrations. Number one was a code framework migration, and then number 2 was a CMS migration. So when it comes to the CMS migration, the CMS that we migrated to, we set it up in a way that we could use dynamic values and optimize clusters of pages in bulk. So we could say, for example, that we're going to set up this dynamic value, the location dynamic value, which this would pull from that specific field. And then it would optimize all the fields that I needed it to optimize in bulk.
Okay.
So in this way, we were able to optimize important on-page fields like the H1, like the meta title, like the meta description, like other on-page fields without having to manually go into each one of those pages and optimize them. So the main logic when it comes to this was that for different page types, we basically created one master template for that page type, and we optimized it with dynamic values. And then that master template fed all the specific pages under it.
Okay.
So, from a top line perspective, basically customizing the CMS in the most efficient way was one of the major challenges. And then number 2 was what were the things that we would do that would bring the biggest impact? Because essentially when I joined, it was me and a content executive.
Oh.
So from an SEO point of view, it was just me.
Right.
Just me and an agency, an external partner.
Right.
So the strategy and, the approach essentially defined by me, and then the agency delivers, what it's supposed to deliver because we don't have the manpower internally. This was the case. So yeah, I guess, prioritizing the things that would bring the biggest impact because it was essentially just a one-man show. Luckily, right now, the team is relatively bigger. And also we had, and we still have very limited dev resources. So whenever I get asked, what should we give the dev from you in the next sprint? I have to be very, very careful in prioritizing things that I believe will bring the biggest impact.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I love how you're prioritizing that. Of all the changes that you guys have made, what do you feel created the biggest impact for you? Let's start maybe with more the technical side of things.
Technical side of things, I'm going to say I'm not a huge fan of page speed as a ranking factor.
Hmm.
I'm not going to claim that it's not. I'm just going to say that based on my experience, and this is what I always say because, people in SEO like to make sweeping generalization and
Sure.
say, page speed, don't pay attention to it. I'm going to say every time what I always say is based on my experience, page speed, not a big ranking factor, but page speed, a big conversion factor. So when I joined Hoppa, our websites were so slow that inevitably they impacted conversions, not rankings, conversions.
Yeah.
And I had to deal with very structural changes as well because, some of the pages were even broken in the front end.
Hmm.
So I realized that, it wouldn't be just about SEO. It would be about, rebuilding, redesigning, because, some of the pages were brand damaging. So yeah, we worked on page speed a lot. We still have to pay attention to page speed because, you have to set up certain processes because as a company develops and they build new things, then you have to incorporate those page speeds benchmarks, optimizations into the new developments as well. Because then, as the pages keep changing, because new features get built in and then they might not be optimized or they might not have looped you in,
Yeah.
then we're going backwards again.
Yeah.
So, yeah, page speed was one of the tech, let's say, developments that contributed. And then the other thing is the code migration that we did. So we migrated from a very old framework called ASP into Next.js, which was a very, very challenging migration. And this is what I always say, that many people think that a migration is challenging only when URLs change, which that's not the case.
Sure.
Because when you rebuild the changes in a different framework, we work on Jira, for example. So I had spec everything on Jira, everything that there is to spec. And I always say that because it's a very representative of how you should constantly be training developers. The first draft of the pages that was handed back to me, it was chaos. It was chaos. Like, there were, I think that weren't even meta titles.
Oh my goodness.
As an element, as a field. So yeah, I mean, pretty much everything can go wrong in a code framework migration. So yeah, you have to have people handling it that, know what can go wrong and are very thorough.
Yeah. Absolutely. Now, when I hear SEOs, people talk about dynamic changes, master template, I think about obviously thousands of kind of mass pages being created where, maybe the city is changed out, but for the most part, these pages, again, in my experience, tend to be kind of the same, maybe not duplicate content, but pretty close to duplicate content. Is that kind of what you guys have built, or do you have like AI content being fed into this, or maybe you can speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. So when it comes to the landing pages, which are essentially our money makers, the content was already there when I joined.
Okay.
Obviously, like you said, there's not much that you can say different from, I don't know, the Mallorca airport page to the, I don't know, JFK airport page, for example. So you can say certain things on the top level about, for example, the airport, or maybe a few things about the area. But there's a very fine line between, crossing to the informational intent side of things and turning this into an article, an informational article, and get completely fucked over by Google.
Yeah.
Mind my language, of course. So the approach is the fact that we might say a few things about the destination and the airport, but then it's mostly about things that the customer should know about where they're going to get picked up from the airport, for example, or where they can find certain information about their booking on their e-ticket, or how much luggage they can carry as part of the ride. Mostly things to do with the experience, the ride experience. Obviously, there might be some sort of overlap of information, so we're kind of rephrasing certain things, but a good chunk is the same because it has to do with the ride experience and the booking flow, let's say. So yeah, that's been pretty much the approach, and that's been consistent across languages, really.
Okay.
And by the way, we don't have, when it comes to our landing pages or money makers, we don't create content with AI.
Okay. And so when I hear, that essentially the whole site is, all the landing pages are going to be pretty similar, obviously subbing out, some information, general information about either about the airport or just the city name throughout, it kind of feels to me like, okay, this is a link building play, right? And because your site's probably going to operate fairly similar to any competing sites where, yeah, you can't write 20,000 pages or 10,000 pages, on the fly like you need to dynamically, unless you're willing to have some duplicate content, in which case, in my mind, at least, I'm thinking the site with the better links, more links is probably going to win. Is that a fair assumption? Or have you guys kind of found ways to maybe compete on an on-page level where the links are not as important?
No, for the most part, I guess it's a combination of both. We have found ways to kind of, let's say, add value to our money making pages. So, for example, through things like external APIs that feed information that is relevant to a specific destination and, areas close to the airport that might be of interest to a specific user slash customer. It's not only content, it's info that we feed from external vendors as well. Yep. Things like, the currency for that specific location or the language spoken or, where you should turn to for, I don't know, tourist information. So I guess it's a combination of both the content that we write as well as the content that we get from third-party vendors to create, let's say, as a complete experience as possible. But what you said is very, very true because link building plays a big role in this. And some of the terms that we target can get very, very nasty when it comes to keyword difficulty. So imagine that our main product term, which is airport transfers, at least in the UK, it's airport transfers in the UK, airport transportation in the US. Airport transfers has close to 70 keyword difficulty. And we rank number 1, by the way.
Yeah.
So you can imagine that you cannot achieve this without not just link building, but insane link building.
Yeah.
So yeah, just to kind of talk through what we've been doing in terms of link building. Up until I think like a month ago, we were doing a combination of traditional guest posting and digital PR. So based on my experience, this is a kind of like the best of both worlds because guest posting allowed us to get links directly to our money pages on relevant websites, and on non-branded anchor text that matter to us. And of course, do follow links because for the most part, it's a paid relationship. So you have much more control over what you're going to do on the guest post. And then we were going also for link earning tactics like digital PR or expert commenting through platforms like Harrow and other platforms like that. And, through that approach, we were getting a different type of links. We were getting links on branded anchor text, links that also, and mentions that also help with brand awareness and links to our homepage, which, it then creates this very, very powerful homepage, which you can then through your internal linking, funnel that link power to all the pages that matter to you.
Yeah.
So for the most part, from a top level perspective, this has been our approach. Right now, we've kind of shifted the link building strategy and we're only doing PR. So we will see how this is going to go. Even drawing from, some of the discussions that John Mueller, gives, there seems to be a shift in what Google approves as legit link building tactics because they seem to think that digital PR is the way to go.
Interesting. So you guys cut out guest posts because you felt they would not be approved by Google?
Not only that,
Okay.
it was mostly budget cuts, I would say.
Okay. Okay.
And not the Google side of things.
Yeah.
But in my eyes, it's, everything in SEO is a test.
Yeah.
And I view this as a test on, whether this can work, or even better, whether this can bring even better results than what the other approach was bringing. But it's very challenging because you have to work your way a lot through internal linking because you're not getting links directly to the money pages.
Yeah.
You have to build things like, on-site content assets and then funnel the link power from those content assets to the pages that you want to rank better.
Makes sense. And just for our audience's perspective, this site that we're referring to right now has a DR of 60, traffic at 92,000. I'm reading just right off of Ahrefs. So obviously this is public, 36,000 keywords. So, very powerful site, very substantial site. Walk us through kind of what that link building mix looked like, again, prior to a month ago, between digital PR and guest posts. And if you had an unlimited budget, what would that look like? Would you have adjusted things at all if you're like, hey, we have $1 million a month to spend on links? Kind of how would that have looked differently?
Yeah, I wish I had that. It's not a question of what would I do with it. Definitely. So listen, I'm a very business metrics focused person, and this is how I run things when it comes to SEO at Hoppa. So I don't believe in traffic for the sake of traffic. I believe in prioritizing all the actions that I can prioritize that I think will bring high intent traffic, most bound to lead to conversions. And I'm, let's say, instilling this approach to all the pillars of SEO, link building included. So just to give you an idea of how I approach things, a link building perspective and how things were up until a month ago, I kind of had this, I call it the link building map, where on a given budget, let's say, on a budget of 20K a month, I set my priority targets and imagine that this link building map is kind of like color coded, and I cluster different pages based on their purpose.
Okay.
So I have my priority pages, which are, the pages that I know are really important to the business. And I want to ensure steady flow of links every month. I usually say to the agency that runs the link building, I want you guys to get links to these 10 pages every month consistently.
Yeah.
So 60 to 70% of the budget goes there. And then the remaining budget goes to other clusters of pages. So I might have seasonal pages. I might have winter destinations, for example. So when I got in Hoppa, the company was facing big seasonality in the winter because they were relying to a good extent on summer destinations. So in the winter, everybody was getting depressed. We're not doing okay, and so on and so forth. So I said, I'm not going to bear with this. I have to do something about this. So, I set up a winter destination strategy, and then I tried to align all pillars of SEO towards boosting winter destinations and the rankings of those winter destinations. And one of those pillars was link building. So naturally, before the winter season, every year, what we do is we start building links to winter destinations. So I'm going to say to the agency, for example, okay, keep building the 60 to 70% of links to the priority targets, and then start building links to the winter destinations. And imagine that on every page, I give like 2 to 3 different anchor texts for the agency to build links to.
Yeah.
And essentially the logic is this. It's the fact that you have a map, and then you have different clusters of pages based on their purpose. So your winter destinations, your summer destinations, potentially clusters of destinations that have to do with different products. So taxis, for example, this is a different, let's say, product. So I'm approaching this through that way. And essentially, I'm approaching everything when it comes to what I'm doing at Hoppa from a revenue perspective and
Sure.
from a conversion perspective, because we do have the ability from our reporting to get insights both on a channel level as well as on a destination slash page level to see the business metrics,
Yeah.
to see the margin that we get, to see the revenue that we get, even down to the net profit level.
Okay. And walk me through kind of your anchor text philosophy right now. You know, I feel like that is something that may change over the years based on kind of how Google is feeling between branded or keyword rich, or, you know, some variation between the two. Kind of where does that stand for you right now?
So the strategy when it comes to anchor text is the fact that let's say on a page level, I try to include different semantic variations. Obviously, the agency knows that they're not going to spam exact match
Sure.
specific anchor text. So we're playing it safe for the
Okay.
most part.
Okay.
It's mostly partial matches or, very, very few exact matches. But this is the thing, just because until a month ago, we're going for a combo of both PR and guest posting links.
Yep.
The beauty of this is that just because you get many, many links through PR, and those are usually no follow links, they are branded anchor texts. You might even get links on URL variations like those of your branded Google Ads campaign. Because what happens with journalists sometimes is that, they want to link to you. So they type in Hoppa, and then your Google Ads brand campaign comes up, and that's the link that they get.
Okay.
Which brings me to my point of the fact that PR gives you a very balanced link profile if you also do guest posting, because you get like, I don't know, 40 links a month through PR. So the 10 links that you get through guest posting, even if those are keyword rich links,
Yeah.
you've already built the balance through PR.
Yep.
So yeah, we're kind of relaxed when it comes to the anchor text strategy. We might get some, exact match links, but for the most part, it's partial match.
Yeah. So I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier. You said that you don't recommend AI, or you're not at least using AI for this particular project. I can understand, where I'm working maybe with an established brand, where I'm an employee of a company, maybe the risk isn't worth it, but maybe with a side project, I'd be like, let's mess around with some AI. It's an easier, cheaper way to scale content. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So the fact is that we are using AI. It's just that just because the landing page content was already there when I joined, and we haven't had the need to, create new content for the money making pages.
Okay.
This is the main reason why we haven't explored AI in our landing pages. We've done content updates for some of the pages that had lost average rank year on year, and we were actually very much benefited from the latest Google update. However, where we are using AI, and quite heavily, I would say, it's on the blog.
Mm.
So pretty much half of the blog content that we have created ever since I joined is created through AI. We're using Surfer SEO and Surfer AI for this. And obviously, when I'm saying that we're using AI, I don't mean that we're just having the tool create the content, and then whatever it spits out, we publish.
Sure.
We have a very, very strict process when it comes to, things like fact checking, like, checking obviously for plagiarism. Surfer AI and Surfer SEO has gotten extremely sophisticated when it comes to some of the features that it's released over the years. So whatever the tool has to, let's say, make us guarantee the fact that we're not going to get picked up for AI content, we use it. We use the AI humanizer that it has. We use some of the new functions that it has. For example, they released a feature yesterday called Topics, which kind of pinpoints, let's say, the important topics / pieces of information that you should include in your content based on what the competitors have. So we have a very, very strict process because I'm 100% white hat. I want to play as safe as possible. And I believe that this is the way to go, especially if you're in house. You can get very easily fucked over. And then, you constantly have to report to other people. So yeah, you cannot let it slip.
I love it. Alex, I want to ask you one last question. Where do you see SEO changing, if at all, in 2025?
Yeah, I don't like to make predictions. I hate it. But since you put me on the spot,
One big prediction. What do you have for me?
yeah, yeah. I guess, the challenge is that right now, at least based on what I'm seeing and based on my experience, it's the fact that you might be improving your position, your average position, but you're losing clicks. And for the most part, that's because of Google's own products and how the SERPs have changed. So even if I draw from my experience in the travel industry, which has all those rich snippets that are unique to the industry. So
Yep.
imagine that travel has rich snippets that no other industry has, much like e-commerce, for example, in the US. I'm sure you've noticed.
Yeah.
So the challenge is to be present, to do all the things that you have to do, to be present in those snippets, and then also, of course, the whole discussion about AI overviews
Yeah.
and, the actions that you have to take to be in that snippet and to kind of mitigate the impact of the traffic loss that's inevitably to happen because
Yeah.
of that snippet.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've witnessed that firsthand myself. When you throw, big giant overview above the normal search results, you're going to lose traffic and clicks because of that. So, Alex, thanks so much for being here today. For those who do want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
So on LinkedIn, the name is Alex Galinos. I'm very, very active. I have a big network. I'm always looking to expand my network, so feel free to reach out.
Fantastic. Thank you so much again for being here today.
Thank you.